Hey, should I say it now?
Mm-mm.
No?
Save it. Save it for after the PR
What?
lap.
All right. I guess you have a point. We'll do that. On today's show, it may be a little self-serving, and we'll allude to that a little bit later. We will talk the NASCAR Cup Series, Xfinity, and F1, but I do have a bit of an announcement to make here on this lovely show. Let's talk about the PR lap, Landon, as always. I did race at Atlanta this past weekend. I finished P2 on a day I don't think we really had a P2 car. So those are one of those days you can be, I guess, happy because you pulled something off, but also I felt very close and like in the right position again at Atlanta late in the race. Just couldn't get the run to materialize down the backstretch. I actually, when we were coming to the 2 to go and then the white, I'm like, all right, I'm third on the top. Essentially, when the 81 drops down, I was like, if I can be third on the top, sort of like I was the spring of 2023 and get the run down the back, I'm like, this might work out. Mind you, Atlanta was like the most slick it's ever been. The first two stages of Atlanta were the hardest thing I've ever done in a race car. I came on the radio and I was like, this is the hardest thing I've done the 2 years with you guys because we were so loose. Everyone was so out of control. At one point, we all went off to the 3 and 4, and I watched the 20 hit the wall, the 18 hit the wall, the 9 hit the wall. It was like there was no grip whatsoever. So that was pretty crazy. But we were able to get up there, and I felt like down the backstretch, I got to the bottom. The 26 makes the move to the top, which I was like, damn, this might really work out if he slows down the 21, and I'm going to have a monster run here. Then he gets in the wall, so I turn down left below him, and then I see, like, and Brandon McReynolds, my spotter, describes that AJ's coming behind me. So now I'm trying to be like, okay, how do I back up to AJ? I know he has new tires, but use him as the run generator. I couldn't back up enough, so if you look at that last lap, like, I don't gain on the 21 because I'm consciously trying to, like, use the brake to back up. Then as he gets to me, I let off the brake, get into the corner, and I'm like, oh, I'm really tight. So I start trying to hit the brake, which I was doing a lot that last run because we tightened up the car so much. And it just took off the track. I was like, okay, nope. And so we fought AJ to the line, and we got P2. But, the first portion of that race, I mean, we were a 12th, 15th place car. And we just put the thing on the ground and made a ton of changes, and everyone stayed in the game, and we got a good finish out of it. But tough day.
Yeah. I mean, I would have loved to seen a win, but gosh, it was like you had to back up to him where you did, but it was the worst possible part of the track to try to back up and get a push. Like, it was too late.
Yep.
There's nothing. It was, if you ended up third, you ended up third, but like, I'm glad you didn't end up wrecked, but.
That is true. He had new tires, so like if he got to me in the wrong way, I mean, he was probably going to drive through us. Tires were worth a lot for the first time ever at Atlanta. And to your point, like, I talked to Austin Hill afterwards, and we were kind of joking around. I was like, I don't know that anyone's ever generated a run from turn 3 to the start-finish line in Atlanta in this new configuration. So, like, he had all the control in the world unless we just had a monster head of steam, but we just didn't. So it was there wasn't much to do. He did what he does, and that was get to the control of a race at Atlanta and didn't give it up.
I had a random conversation on Saturday night that one sparked me to put this topic in our notes for the show. So it's a little bit random, but given super speedway racing and the red flags, what do you do during red flags? Have you any good red flag stories? Because I've got some good ones.
I got some good ones. So one of my favorites was, I just told this story the other day because they're doing a piece on it. But back in 2009, ARCA, I was racing Justin Laughlin for the championship at Rockingham. And we had a red flag. Basically we came in there so close in points, I had to lead the most laps and win the race to have a chance to win the championship. We get a red flag like a little past halfway or something. So I think I had led the most laps. And I'm leading, and so we park in 1 and 2. And I'm in this championship battle trying to win our 9th race of the season. I fell asleep. I had to be I remember waking up to them being like, hey, man, you got to fire off. Like, fire. I'm like, oh, okay, sorry.
I've done that a couple times.
Yeah, nowadays I don't know. I wouldn't fall asleep. So this one, when we had that red flag, all I was thinking about was, okay, well, now I'm up front. Where do I want to be in the last 2 laps? Like, that's when I start to think of, like, playing my scenarios in my head of saying, where do we want to be? How am I going to generate the run? How am I going to put us in the best position to win this thing, right? And then you try to, like, not think about anything, not think about how hot you are, because it was incredibly hot that day, you know? What's your favorite one?
I got a couple good ones. They both involve Ross Chastain, and I'm trying to think who else I've done this with in the next gen. But first off, me and Ross in the next gen cars, when I was driving the 77, anytime we were around each other during red flags, we would play rock, paper, scissors.
No way.
But we would do it where the person behind would hold their hand way up, like in the windshield, and then the person in front would look in their rear view camera so you could see it through the windshield, and we'd play rock, paper, scissors, shoot. And I think I've done that. I know I've done that with several drivers. I think I've done that with Corey too, and I feel like Daniel Suarez. I don't know. I cannot remember. Maybe if those guys are like, oh, and I've never played rock, paper, scissors with Landon. I know I've done it with more drivers than just Ross, because then there was once me and Ross started doing it, like every time there was a red flag, I'd bump the driver in front of me and try to like get him to play rock, paper, scissors.
Do you think they always understand? So, did you guys ever talk about this before? Or did he just understood?
No, you just do it. You just like do kind of like a couple dry runs, and then once you could tell, like they look in their camera and they see you, and then they see what you're doing. It's like they just stick their hand up and they would do it. And then my favorite one, I did this to Ross, and this is a real story that is hilarious, and this is it was either like Texas or Michigan or somewhere. I have to ask him. I remember what track it was. We were racing for position, okay, and there was a red flag, and he was behind me, and I waved him ahead to like roll up next to me.
No.
And so I told him, like, come on, wave up here, and he like pushes the clutch in, and he creeps down the hill, and then he stops. And I take out my water bottle, and I just squirted water all over his windshield.
That is horrible. I'd be so angry.
He was so mad. He was like, he rolled up hard and was like giving me the finger and stuff. I was like,
That's amazing. Because they could, like, at that point, your windshield is covered in oils and, sand, and, like, it's already hard to see out of, especially if it's one of those late afternoon races. No, that's amazing. No, I don't have any fun ones like that. Maybe I just forget them. I mean, I've definitely
texted Ross on Saturday night and was like, hey, do you still play rock, paper, scissors with anybody? He said, no, nobody's fun anymore.
It's too serious now. Everyone's too much locked in. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've definitely had, like, where I've pulled up next to someone where we've had maybe, like, a little run-in, and they just sit there with the middle finger out the entire time for, like, 5 minutes. I'm like, hey, bro, your hand must be tired by now. Good luck with that. Oh, that's cool. Well, you always do have them at super speedways. That is the thing. I always think about the fact that it's kind of like, especially late in a super speedway, if, like, you're in the green-white checker phase, it's almost like a timeout for other sports, or like icing the kicker, because you could be like so in in the mode and like just making moves, and then it takes you all out of that, and you've got to like find a way back
too.
Yeah, rain delays like that.
Yeah,
for sure.
They kind of get you out of the focus. You gotta. It's rain delays and long red flags suck, especially because if your adrenaline actually like completely comes down.
Yep.
So
you got to like find your way, something to like get you back
into the zone.
In the zone, yeah, it's tough. Trey Ryan 99 on Twitter posted a cool thing this week that I thought was kind of fun. I didn't even realize this, but basically the best average finish drivers over the top 3 series were P4 in the Xfinity series, which I had no idea.
Nice.
And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. So we're definitely on the pace for the best average finish I've ever had in Xfinity. If we can keep it going.
I'm surprised at how high the number 1 average finish is. It's Cole Custer at 10.9. Average finish of almost 11th. That seems not great. Or maybe that's a testament to how competitive the Xfinity Series is right now.
So I think that is because the non-competitive years, you get super low average finishes for the champion. Like 8.8 or something like that, or in trucks, Eckes and Heim are 8.1 and 5.7. I mean, Eckes is having an insane year. Reddick is 10.96, so just a little bit higher than Cole Custer's in the Xfinity Series, and we know how competitive the Cup Series is. So to your point, that shows the Xfinity Series this year is definitely pretty damn competitive. We did not have any new Apple reviews. So everyone listening, we told you last week, if you have a friend who might benefit from this show or enjoy it, share it with them. Tell them to leave a review. They will end up on this show. They will end up on this show, I promise. Anytime we get a 5-star review, we put it on the show. So do that. We are disappointed not to have any new ones. Stop disappointing us. Spotify. So Josh left us this week. He went to Hawaii on vacation. I have no idea how to access the comments in Spotify, so we don't have any there.
We just don't know how to.
How's that for a cop-out? So if you left something on Spotify, maybe we'll get it next week when Josh is back. YouTube, we had some cool comments. This one's really long, but I'll summarize it from CKY Moto. Basically talking about when we were saying that driver values have been sort of suppressed as of late, and they were sort of asking how, when you used to be able to run Cup and Xfinity combined and you had Cup drivers, did that raise the value of the series? Did that raise the value of drivers? That sort of thing. And I actually think, for the Xfinity series, it hasn't really changed it hasn't changed the cost to be an Xfinity. It hasn't, even with the loss of those large sponsors that came along with those Cup drivers that ran full seasons. You think back to the days of Keselowski running the discount tire car and Carl Edwards running for Roush, and the RCR Holiday Inn cars and those cars that had big sponsors and that sort of thing. I don't know if the cost has really changed. It's just you don't have the where the funding is coming from is maybe different than the corporate world to be more of personal funding from the driver. So I don't know if that affected the values per se. Obviously, the biggest thing over the last 20 years that has affected driver value and income is the lack of sponsorship, right? As sponsorship decreased, drivers lost the leverage as to where they get paid the most. So that definitely has probably had the biggest effect. This one was nice. Chicago Street Course fan on YouTube. Landon Cassill is awesome. Thought you'd like that one.
That's a good one.
Yeah, we had 2 emails to friends@themoneylap.com. First one was Pat. This guy, Pat McAssey. I feel like we've had him. I'm not going to give you his email. We're not going to do that.
Oh yeah, this is the most dangerous part of the show. So just everybody look out. High alert, because we are about to dox the people that send us emails.
We are very close. Always very close. The next one asked us to please not dox them. So
Good.
I'll let you do that one. Basically, this Pat's question and sort of statement here was that with all the criticism discussion around the playoffs, it made him think that maybe the playoff system sort of rewards a different champion than before. If the traditional championship structure rewards the most consistently high-performing driver across the season, do the playoffs find out who is best at minimizing big mistakes under pressure? I think that's self-explanatory, yes. I think it adds obviously an element of luck. And really, nowadays, we often talk about, especially in the media, making it to the championship 4 because, and I think for teams and drivers, we focus on that because that's sort of what we at least feel like we have more control over. A one race, basically for the championship, there's a lot that can happen that's out of your control. One mechanical failure like we've seen from Christopher Bell, or another driver taking you out, or being involved in a wreck, or just a bad pit stop and suddenly you lose the championship. That obviously has an element of randomness to it that is not the case over 36 weeks combined, right? So I would say, yes, big mistakes under pressure, that is what it leads itself to allowing. We've seen that, but it's a different way of doing it. But if everyone's under the same rules, may the best team and driver win. He also says, P.S. Parker, just want to say thanks. I taught myself to drive stick when I was in college by watching a video you did with Jalopnik about racing drivers' tips for learning manual. That was like 2015 or 2016. I haven't owned an automatic since. My man, save the manuals. Love that. That was a funny video. We did it in a Fiat Abarth, and I taught people how to drive stick, and that thing blew up, and I got so many hateful comments for like trying to give them ways that they could do it really quickly then instead of maybe some of the proper ways at times. But it seems like Pat learned perfectly. So you know what, YouTube commenters, you don't know what you're talking about. I'll let you take the next one.
One more note on the whole playoff
Yep.
thing. I think, back when I think Brian France was still the CEO of NASCAR, wasn't he the one that kind of gave us the sound bites about Game 7 moment, the desire to find Game 7 moments and things like that. I mean,
correct.
It's that email from Pat is a really good point about just the pressures and minimizing the big mistakes under pressure and the pressure moments that like you could put together the perfect season and make one mistake and it costs you a championship. And I argue in support of that's sports, right? Like that is a a football team putting together the perfect season and throwing an interception in the last play of the championship game and losing it all, right?
Correct.
So, just because you put together 20, 30 good races, the traditional way says, hey, that guy deserves to be the champion. It's a season-long championship. The modern version of sports likes to see playoffs, likes to see Game 7 moments, likes to see that stuff. So I don't know.
Yep.
It's either the evolution of sport, and some people are on board, some people aren't. Could be wrong. Could go back to another way of doing things. Who knows?
I don't know if we'll ever go back.
Probably not.
No.
Let's see. We got another email from someone
Don't dox
who
them.
I'm not gonna dox this person. Their name starts with a C. That's all I got. That's all I'm gonna give you because I've got a username. I can see their email address, and I got a first name. So I mean, gosh, I feel like if I just read through this Ron Burgundy style, we could really figure this person out. So name starts with a C. Greetings. Love the show and all the insights you give on the motorsports world. Listening to the pod always makes my Thursday morning commutes more palatable. This person also drives to work on Thursday mornings. So we have to be careful. Question I have for you both. With NASCAR reportedly wanting to put an anti-disparagement clause, a.k.a. the Denny Hamlin clause, in the next charter agreement, I'm guessing that's a reference to Curtis Polk. Isn't that his name?
Yep. At
Wearing,
2311.
From 2311, wearing a kick me sign on his back that says, "Don't bother me," or "Don't ask me about any quotes about the charter agreement. I don't want to get in trouble." So that's what that's referencing, I suppose. Have you guys ever gotten in trouble with NASCAR for things you said to the media or publicly on social media? I don't think I have.
I have.
I don't think that I have. I've tweeted things before that I got a pretty quick text that said, really? I've gotten that.
How high up did it come from, the text?
High enough that I rethought my...
All right.
But
that's good.
I don't, I can't think of anything. I don't know. I don't know if that's a testament to me or NASCAR.
Yeah. I mean, it's maybe a little bit
we
of both.
speak pretty freely, but I also don't think that I disparage NASCAR in any way that they've needed to be to penalize me. So,
Well, I didn't disparage NASCAR, but I did learn pretty quickly about some of the way things work. This was 2012. We were racing for the championship in trucks when I was at Red Horse, and I did a press conference at Martinsville in the morning, and I got asked about the incoming 2013 truck dirt race. And if you remember at the time, everyone knew it was happening, but I guess it wasn't public. And Ty Dillon had gone and tested up there and tested and got to do a test when it was obviously, testing was banned at the time and all this stuff. And so I think I said something along the lines of go talk to Ty Dillon and RCR because they obviously get to go test or something like that. I got out of the truck. In the truck during practice, my crew chief said, "Hey, you need to go to the NASCAR hauler when this is done." And I was like, "Okay, what's going on?" He's like, "Just go there. So I go in there, and it's Mike Helton. Who else was in there? There was like
Wayne
3 or
Otten,
4
probably.
people. Wayne Otten was definitely in there because he was the series director of trucks. And basically, the comment was, hey, we don't need you making announcements for us. And I was like, 10-4, got it. Noted. And there wasn't really anything else said. And then it was quiet, and it was like, that's your cue to leave. And I was like, okay, see you later. So
I've had stern talkings to in that hauler before, but not over public statements.
Okay.
So
way to make it vague.
yeah.
So we have 2 voicemails. We've been telling everyone that if you go to moneylap.com, no longer themoneylap.com, if you go to moneylap.com, you can leave us voicemails. We have 2. We don't have Josh here to pull off the tech side of this, so we're going to try this real quick if we pull this off with me working the tech here.
Don't
so
blow
it's probably
it.
all going to break. This is going to be a disaster. But we got first one here was from September 6th, the crazy M80. Let's take a listen.
Hey, thank you guys for this opportunity here. Long-time caller, first-time listener of the Money Lap. And Parker and Landon just do a great job. And I'm curious on something is what is the most fun car or fun track or combination of car and track that you guys have ever raced on? And I am fishing a little bit here because I have actually accrued on some old AS18s back in the day. So racing against Landon up here in Minnesota at I-94 Raceway and Elko Speedway. So I'm curious to see if either of those tracks make the list. Yeah, let me know what is your most fun car or fun track that you've ever raced on, or car and track combo that you just got out of the vehicle when you were done. You were like, that was amazing. I want to do this every day. So keep up the great work, guys. And thank you for all that you do.
Good stuff. So what's your answer?
Good stuff. I'm going to let you answer first, but I will comment that I-94 Raceway that he's talking about was maybe one of the slickest asphalt tracks I've ever raced on. That is a fun car and track combo. It's like a fairly flat, but I think some progressive banking, if I remember it right. And it's slicker than hell. So it was like I was just lost on the track.
I'm trying to think. What's the coolest thing I've gotten to drive? I mean, I did go do that deal at Spa, which was pretty cool when I did that deal with Xfinity, the car manufacturer, against Sebastian Vettel.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, just being on Spa, even though I only got a couple laps in this, like, modified road car, it was pretty awesome. I did love that a lot.
It's hard to put me on the spot here because I feel like my default, I'm not creative enough right now to go any farther than being like, oh, give me an Xfinity car at Darlington.
Well, I know my first thought, I was thinking like just some of the wore out tracks. I mean, I remember the first time taking an Xfinity car around Road America was a pretty amazing experience because I just had idolized that place for so long. And then to me, NASCAR going there was going to be the coolest thing ever. And I'll never forget as you went down the backstretch from the kink towards Canada Corner, and you had this was when you first went there, the trees really overhanged the racetrack, and you're at like fourth gear at 8,000 RPM, 8,500 before you start braking, and it feels like you're going 1,000 miles an hour because the shadows and the trees are whipping by. That was a pretty amazing experience. I also did get to go do a bunch of car reviews up at Road America a couple years ago where I drove a Lexus LFA at Road America, and I drove a Ford GT, and those were pretty amazing. But my favorite car was the Jaguar XK120 that I got to drive from the 1950s, which was amazing. So I don't know if that's like – I have a lot of things I want to go drive. How about that? I also drove a rally car at the Isle of Man. That was pretty cool. So,
do you know the "See You Again" ending scene of Fast and Furious 7, where after Paul Walker had passed away, like in real life, but there was this like the saddest scene ever, and the cars splitting, and the overhead drone shot of the two cars going different directions, and that was me leaving Atlanta after the last old Atlanta track surface race. After racing there in an Xfinity car and ripping the top, I passed. I was driving for Johnny Davis, and I passed. Oh my God, who was the IndyCar driver that was driving for Sam Hunt at the time? Ferrucci. Just I gave Ferrucci an absolute lesson on how to drive a stock car in an intermediate track, ripping the fence, closing laps, passed him for 12th or something. I don't know, might have been 10th. I have no idea. I can't remember where I finished. It was a good finish though. And yeah, that was an emotional goodbye to a car and track combination that is one of the best.
Yeah, that was amazing. That place, when you were on and you would hook the bottom in the right places in 3 and 4 and be ripping the top in 1 and 2 or vice versa, you just moved around and you were making long runs work. There was few cooler feelings. Rockingham was like that. The old
I think
Rockingham.
super late models at IRP is a really good car track combination.
I raced USAC midgets there. I loved it. That place for USAC midgets is insane. It's 6 lanes wide, and I'll never forget the last USAC midget race I did was the night before the 400 in 2009. I did like one midget race that year, showed up, national race, made the feature, and at the end of the race, I was racing like 13th or something, 12th maybe, with Brad Sweet, and he was all the way on the apron. I was running the wall. It looked like we were running 2 different racetracks. And he'd be smoking the right rear tire off the corner, and we would come off the corner each time and just join like directly bumper to bumper, and then split off in the corners again, then join directly bumper. And I'm in there like moving the weight jacker and the shocks, trying to adjust our car or whatever. And I think I ended up finishing right there with him. But it was one of those moments like in my head I can see that image of him down there at the bottom, me all the way up top, and just I'll never forget it. That place has always been incredible.
Well, if you have an image of a race car in your head.
No, you don't. Yeah, not yet. We have one more.
What?
Yeah.
Damn, that was a good one too, and you blew it.
We literally planned it. It's in the notes. It's like right there. 1, 2. Like, just read the thing. We gotta pull this off again, technology wise. So hold on. So now I wasn't as prepared as I was the first time.
Do the other one.
We have one more here voicemail wise. Take a listen.
Hey, Parker and Landon. It's your buddy Chad. Long-time listener, first-time caller. Hey, so we have Watkins Glen road course this week where they have stage points with no stage breaks. Do you like it that way, or do you wish there were breaks, or do you wish the rest of the races followed suit where they kept stage points or just kept racing? Myself, I wish it would just keep racing, but maybe I'm old school. Hey, but with road courses also come hired guns and road course ringers. Do you guys love it? Do you hate it? I kind of like it, having other drivers, big top drivers from other series coming over, trying to sling that stock car around. Also brings ice to the sport that maybe haven't before. But always, podcast, amazing. Keep it up. Have a great week. Parker, checker flag is bound to wave at least once before the season's over for you. So cheers.
Thanks, Chad.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way it worked, by the way. I'm going to be surprised if this all worked out perfectly technology-wise. But, yeah, I actually, as a viewer, I like the stage breaks at road courses.
Mm-hmm.
As a driver, yes, they offer some help, but I feel like, especially when you're having a really good road course, it's the worst thing ever. Like, I'll be running like third or something, and it's like, we're going to be put back in 18th because everyone just flipped the stage. Awesome. Sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that makes it tough for me, as a driver. From the outside, as a viewer, and I do find it does add some spice to the races. And if you're going to have stages in other races, why not just do it all the way through?
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I go back and forth. I don't think I'm committed one way or the other. I think if I had to pick one, which one am I stranded on a deserted island with? I would say races without stage breaks.
Okay.
But and that's just in general. That includes road courses. But it's not, I'm not dying on that hill. There's a lot of people that'll die on that hill. I don't know if I'm going to die on that hill. I think I'm voting in favor of no stage breaks. But yeah, I sorry I'm not so convicted on this, Chad.
Yeah, wow, you really took a real hard stance there.
Here's why. Like I'm in favor of races with good, unpredictable strategy, right? But there's plenty of races with stage breaks that still have unpredictable strategy.
Mm-hmm.
It just, it's just how the cautions fall, and it's how the fuel strategies work. And so I think sometimes at road courses, you end up with the potential for predictable strategy because the stages just end up like really cookie cutter. Like there's no pit stop in the first stage, there's no pit stop in the second stage, and then there's only one pit stop in the third stage, and there's only like a 6-lap buffer. So it's just like there's not a lot of room to be creative sometimes. So that's where I would say like just get rid of stage breaks, and that way you open up the race for some unique strategy. But I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. I get why they do it. It's not a hill I'm dying on, but I don't. I'm team no stage breaks.
No, yeah, we just learned you really have a strong opinion about it.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I see both sides, like I said, but I think they're kind of here to stay, especially for the entertainment value.
I think they are. Yeah.
So I did promise an announcement. We said after the PR lap I would do this, and I'm not really sure how someone does something like this, so we're just going to kind of wing it. Do you just say it, you think? What do you think?
Just talk.
Just talk. All right. So this week, I will not be returning to Big Machine Racing next year. And not only that, this will be my last year as a full-time race car driver in the NASCAR series and just in general being a race car driver. I'm no longer pursuing full-time rides. I do have to say thank you to Big Machine Racing, Scott and Sandy Borchetta for the opportunity for the last couple years here and to sort of finish this journey in a way that I'm proud of. I do have a ton of other people that I'd love to thank, and I will be putting something out after this goes out. So this will be going out. We're recording this Wednesday afternoon, September 11th. This will go out Thursday, September 12th in the morning. So for all of you that clicked on this because it probably said Parker announcement or something like that in the title, then I'll be also putting some stuff out on my socials, obviously thanking all the people that made this happen. And as Landon, as you know, it takes a little army to make a career as a race car driver happen, continue, come back, do all the things that we've been able to do in this sport. But, I think for a lot of people want to know sort of how you come to a decision like this. I will lie. It's not a small decision. It definitely didn't happen overnight. It was a lot of months of deliberating and thinking about it and then going down one path and then another and then going back and forth. But I will say there was one sort of seminal moment, which was back in June. After the Portland race, we went to Sonoma for the next week because we all stay out there. And I went for a run, and this is going to sound wildly cliche, so I'm sorry. Turn it off if you don't want to hear this. But anyway, I went for a run. I ended up at the top of this mountain overlooking the water there in San Francisco, basically. And I just had this moment where I was like, I think I'm good. I think I want to finish this year out, and then I want to kind of see what's next. And so I ended up calling my girlfriend and telling her that, and she was like, wow, that's pretty powerful. Did you feel that? I was like, no, I really think I did. And then you go back and forth, right? It's definitely the next few months you're deliberating internally, externally, sort of saying I don't know if that's the case. I should probably just keep doing this, whatever. Let's just keep going. But I think, to be entirely transparent, and I know you would understand this, for me, it's obviously been a very unique journey in terms of being full-time, then a lot of part-time racing and working TV and then back to full-time. But I think for, the back of my head, I kind of felt like, hey, I want to try to get to the top, get to the Cup Series. That's the eventual goal. And it just started to become very apparent that through many reasons that, that was not an opportunity that was going to present itself. And, I just find myself sort of saying if this is, I feel like I've done this. And, not been nearly successful as I wanted to be, of course. I think as of saying this right now, I think I've done 257 NASCAR races. I've only won 3, so I've failed 257 times. So haven't been as good as I wanted to be. But, I think that just started to sit in my mind a little bit. And obviously my focus has been in trying to win races and fight for this championship with Big Machine Racing this year. But it's only natural. You have to sort of think about this, and especially when you get to the halfway point of these years, because that's kind of the time you start to say, hey, what's going on for next year? What do we do? And everyone wants to know. You start to discuss, put things together, that sort of thing, especially as you get closer to the end of the year. I had a lot, great talks with Scott, and, but it just, it became more of a feeling I couldn't put aside to say, I think I'm ready for the next chapter. I don't know exactly what that is right now. I think there's a lot of people that assume, there's a lot of opportunities in the TV side, and I'm sure that will be something I pursue and want to be a part of. I don't know to what capacity and that sort of thing. And I'm not really sort of pressuring myself to sort of figure that out. I think right now, going back to sort of the racing side, it's full focus on what we're doing here. We're obviously performing at a really high level at Big Machine Racing. We've got a huge opportunity to lock ourselves in the playoffs this coming weekend at Watkins Glen. Even if we don't, I think it's a place we can run super well at. Bristol's a great track for us, and a lot of the tracks in the playoffs are great. My focus is on making the championship 4 and ending on top. So hopefully we can make that happen. I did get a little introspective when I was like, man, I stepped in a go-kart for the first time 22 years ago. And I've literally been paid to drive race cars for over 15 years. So, I told my crew and everyone, the team yesterday, and one of my truck driver was like, man, you really sure? I was like, buddy, he's new to this. This is like his second year ever in the sport. And I was like, but I've been doing this for over 15 years. So but it's not been a fly-by-night thing. And it's, I'm actually really happy to do this on our podcast. Thank you for letting me do this, by the way. This is, a great place to do. I hope a lot of people will find the podcast and become listeners from this. But, I'm curious about your thoughts on this, but I was thinking back to like when you start something like trying to become a race car driver, and when you're thinking about it, and when you're young, you're thinking, all right, the great passes, the wins, the championships, how you're gonna be the best ever, and the part about now stopping seems like so far out that it'll never happen to you. You're like, that's never gonna. I don't even need to worry about that. That's not even a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But then it just sort of happens. And I talked to a couple people who had, had that chance to choose to retire and that sort of thing, and they would say, I don't really know, but I just knew, and you just know. So I hope to still jump in a car here and there, maybe especially the truck series, that sort of thing. Lime Rock next year, I'd love to be in that race. I do want to go explore the motorsports world, the world over. I have such an interest, as many who listen to this podcast know, in so many different forms of motorsports, and I just think it's such a diverse sport. It comes in so many shapes and forms and sizes and sounds and smells, and it's so different the world over. I'd love to go explore that. So I think that's on my mind, but as I said, I don't know exactly what the next chapter looks like, but I know I'll be doing this podcast if you'll keep doing it with me. And most of all, we do have a championship to go try and win right now. So that's my biggest hope at the moment. But I guess that's everything. So, I mean, when you were starting, like, I think it's like, it's just a funny thing. Like and now I'm 34 now, but I was 9 years old when I first saw racing on Speed Vision and was like, I want to be a race car driver. Right. And then made it happen. And I was like, the thing this teaches you that one is all the times it should have ended. Right. Which I think you and I have both been through many times. All the village and the army it takes to make it happen, and then that you actually do accomplish it and you're there, and it's like, wow, how did this even happen? I'll never forget my manager and coach and just one of my best friends. This whole endeavor was named Bob Perona, and we got to where we signed that contract with Swan, and we both looked at each other and we just said, no one would believe us that we made this happen. So anyway, thank you all, for all the listeners out there, viewers on YouTube. I, wholeheartedly appreciate all the support, especially over the years, and especially of this podcast. To all the fans, who have showed up to races and just asked for autographs, whatever, reached out, follow on social media. It's meant the world. You're the only reason any of this exists, and I hope to definitely be a part of motorsports in some facet or form for the rest of my life. But, this will be the end of this chapter of being a professional race car driver. So. Looking forward to the next one, man.
That's awesome, man.
Appreciate it.
I love that.
Yeah, we'll see. Should we talk more racing though? Because we're not, and I'm not done yet. As I said, I got 10 weeks to finally get a checkered flag. I did say one thing in my team, by the way. One more side note. I said, hey guys. So I've had this dream when I first started. I've always kept checkered flags. I don't really keep trophies. I'm not really into trophies. And my whole thing with checkered flags is that no matter if you win a go-kart race at a local go-kart track or you win the Daytona 500, they end under a checkered flag. So they all should mean the same weight, right? And so I had this dream where I was like, oh, I'm going to win all these races. I'm going to one day have a wall where it's just all the checkered flags covering the whole wall. And between ARCA and trucks, I've got 13. I don't really have enough for a full wall. So I was like, hey, boys, we got to get to work here in the next few weeks because I got to get some decoration. I got decoration plans that need some checkered flags. So hopefully we can go get that done, especially starting Watkins Glen. But, let's start the Cup Series and talk NASCAR Cup Series. Joey Logano won the first race of the playoffs. We all keep our brackets alive because we all had him moving through. So go us. Kind of a crazy super speedway race in terms of just, some close pack style racing for laps and laps on end this past weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Anything stick out to you from it before we move on?
I think it's so interesting to me how action-packed that track can be, and then also it'll just go into like this death single file, can't pass 1.5 lane track.
Yep.
But that yet we finish with 3x3x3x3. And also for you to say, the Xfinity side that the track was slicker than it's ever been. But on the Cup side, I felt like those cars were making more daring moves than we've seen them. The comfort level looked higher to me. I'm not saying it looked easier.
Yeah, I think I did see some comments about, grip level, like they were maybe going a little slower, that sort of thing, and maybe that was generating runs particularly.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that was part of what helped it. That place is odd, man. It's in a weird it's going to go through this transition in the next few years of being this like in between. And the thing that no one talks about Atlanta that makes it so weird is, and I don't have this verified, but I'm going to tell you what it looks like on the track. And I think you and I have talked about this. But turns 1 and 2, the banking kind of goes all the way to the top, and it looks like a normal banking. But 3 and 4, the banking from the bottom as it gets to the middle looks like it flattens out to the top.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, man, this thing is
It's always been that way a little bit.
Yeah, it definitely was. So like they kept it the same, but it just maybe looks more pronounced, and especially because we're trying to be flat out. And it's I don't know. That's going to be a funky corner as this place ages for sure.
It's going to go through a lot of transition, that's for sure. So
Yeah.
I think I love the new Atlanta format. I had somebody ask me over the weekend, like, what's it like to drive there? I was like, it feels a lot like Daytona to me, to be honest with you. I don't know if you feel the same, but it feels like Daytona to me. It just feels like everything happens a little bit faster.
Yeah.
Which makes sense, right? You're going the same speed as you're going at Daytona, but the track's smaller. So
Yep.
It's like going to Bristol, right?
Fighter jets
just
in the
things happen
fishbowl.
fast. Yeah, fighter jets. It really does feel that way. So, I love the format. I love the track. It's going to go through a lot. It should make it interesting. Hopefully the end product is just as good as the one that we're seeing right now.
And just to put a bow on this, we're not going to dive too much into all the racing, that stuff, because we said this come out on Thursday. So just to give an update on some of the playoff stuff that sticks out to me, Chase Briscoe now at the bottom of the playoffs after
Bad
that
for
awesome
my
win.
bracket.
Yeah, awesome win to get in, was involved in that wreck with Kyle Larson. So Kyle Larson has that ginormous wreck in turns 1 and 2 where he overcorrected the car. And Chase, it looks like, was coming through there, could see the smoke, then the sun sort of is in there, if you watch his onboard. But I believe at the time probably that he wanted to sort of divert. He might have been in, I don't know, some fluid or something because he hit him a ton, destroyed his car. So he now sits 21 points below the cut line with 2 races to go, which is Watkins Glen and Bristol. And Martin Truex Jr. probably one of the had kind of not had has not had the momentum going into the playoffs. Starts off with a tough day. He's 19 points below, so they got some work to do.
Should be interesting.
Mm-hmm. Watkins Glen will be important. A road course. We'll see who's got it. All right, this is the thing that always makes our most listened to episodes. People love when you and I talk about charters. Why, I have no idea, but they love when we talk about business. Maybe that's a sign. I don't know.
Well, let me tell you about a business.
Oh,
Okay?
really?
Yeah, there is the best business, I think, in this industry is this business of diecasts. Are you a racing enthusiast looking for high-quality diecasts and apparel? Look no further than SpoilerDiecast.com, one of the fastest-growing companies in the industry. Charter team owners, take note, because what sets these guys apart, they pride themselves on it. Exceptional service. All orders ship either same or next day, ensuring you get your hands on your favorite products in no time at SpoilerDiecast.com. The best part, free shipping on orders over $20. That's right, you can enjoy a smooth and affordable shopping experience with SpoilerDiecast.com. They have over 1,100 unique products currently in stock. They have one of the largest inventories in the industry of diecast companies or resellers, sellers. What would you call them?
Yeah, sellers.
Distributors. Sellers. They are NASCAR focused. They've got all kinds of diecast and apparel options. F1, IndyCar, dirt sprint cars. They're race fans just like us.
Yeah.
I had to surprise you with this one since I led into it a little earlier.
You did great. No, I was totally caught off guard.
I think this one
I
caught
loved
you
it.
off guard. It
did.
Because you're sitting there ready to dive.
What is going on? What is he talking about? Oh, that's right.
Right
Spoiler
before
Diecast.
probably the most interesting charter development since when did we have a material charter development that was interesting? We've had quotes. There's been self-imposed deadlines. There's been stuff. We've had, Adam Stern on. He's talked about grumblings, but I don't think there's any. The last material change was when NASCAR signed their media rights deal.
Mm-hmm.
Even though that wasn't directly correlated with the charter agreements, that was a big shift in negotiation, right? And you've heard me talk about this for months, that I have felt like that was the moment that the teams lost their leverage, was when NASCAR signed a media rights deal without the teams, unencumbered by the teams, right?
Yep.
Because the teams up to that point had felt like their ace in the hole was that they could maybe get the TV, the networks, Amazon, NBC, Fox, to hold off on signing until there was a charter agreement, right? And that NASCAR would have to succumb to their demands and the perpetual charters and increasing the share of the media rights, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. More details than you and I even know about, right?
Yep.
That was the team's leverage. When NASCAR proved they could sign with the networks and the teams were no part of that, the teams lost their leverage, in my opinion. And we have been saying that for months. We've talked about it at length with our people on our network, with team owners, with NASCAR executives, and on the air, off the air. We've talked about it, and now it seems like it sort of proved itself to us and came to fruition when, over the weekend, NASCAR had a deadline to the teams, and pretty much every single team except for two organizations, 2311 and Front Row Motorsports, signed the charter agreement.
And to kind of go a little bit deeper there, this was sent to the teams on Friday night, and they were basically told to sign it by midnight. So basically 13 of the teams did. You had 2 that didn't. There's been a lot of quotes that have come out since then. Obviously, 2311 put out a statement at that moment, that next day. And to show you kind of how quickly this all happened, I was sitting on a plane back from Atlanta Saturday night with some 2311 crew members, and they were like, yeah, we didn't know anything until it was on Twitter. No one told us. And maybe half hour later, they got an email from the team being like, hey, here's what's happening. So I think a lot of stuff moved fast there. At the end of the day, the 2311 team basically just made it clear that they didn't feel like that they agreed with the, putting a time limit on them, and they didn't agree with what had been, what it's all come to. Mm-hmm. And I think FRM was in a similar comment, basically. Since then, Rick Hendrick has been quoted as basically saying he felt the deal was as good as it gets and that he was tired of it. He's tired of dealing with this. To kind of expand on that, one thing that Adam Stern put out there that I thought was really fascinating, the last place charter from the 2016 deal to 2024 was expected to make around $5 million a year. That has now gone to apparently around $8.5 million in the newest deal, which ChatGPT tells us is a 70% increase I don't know about that.
You
math.
could have used a calculator for that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that math. No, it's significant.
So
And
I want to
that's
make
been the
one
biggest
little.
sticking point usually.
I want to put one little. There's a lot of details there. There's a lot of sticking points, and not just the money and the share, but like the length, the duration of the charters. I know that the team owners were trying to get perpetual charters, but I'm curious about one thing, and we can kind of blow through this point, but I just want to go piece by piece here. The charter agreement was sent to the teams on Friday and told to sign by midnight, right? This has been a 2-year-long, multi-year negotiation. It has been a seemingly the negotiation has seemed to be at an impasse for months, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now what we're being told and what we see here publicly is that the teams were sent this final version of the charter agreement on Friday and told to sign by midnight. And practically all of the teams signed it.
Yes.
What was the or else? Because that is where we get into this conversation, and I'm okay if you're okay with it. Like let's spend some time on this. That is where we get into what happens now for 2311 and FRM, because there's something we don't know what the or else was, right? But there's an or else there.
Well, they say I think there was a report that it was basically that they could lose their charters. Was the or else?
Okay. So what is that? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, what I'd like to say is that I think what this puts us in is unchartered territory. Landon.
Thank you. Good one. Good one. I'm trying to have a serious
You
conversation.
think I'm the first one to do that? I don't know. No, I do agree. I do agree. What is the ramification of this? No one knows. This has not happened. I mean, this charter system is still very new, right? As a system that is in NASCAR only came about 2015, 2016 when it came in. So this is uncharted waters. I can't stop. No, I'm saying I don't think anyone does know, and I think that is sort of the posturing right now is like, okay, well, this is sort of a game of chicken a little bit, right? Well, in what happens?
Okay, a game of chicken is when two parties are going head to head on a one track, and somebody has to give out.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's consequences that affect both parties. But
so
at this point,
we're past it, the game of chicken. They've already made the move.
I think NASCAR made the move. The chicken, like, what is the consequence of? What is NASCAR's consequence now? That they lose 2311? Like that 2311? Like, what is NASCAR's reason? What is NASCAR's motivation to reach out to 2311 and be like, hey, we put a deadline and you didn't sign it, right? Like, what is what's the dynamic here? Because I feel like all of the leverage is in NASCAR's hands now. I think that there is some motivation to not lose 2311, and I'm not trying to ignore Front Row Motorsports for a second. Like they're valuable too, but let's just focus on 2311 because they're the biggest name. Denny is the loudest voice, right? Like, let's just focus on them. He's kind of painted themselves in a box, it seems like, negotiation-wise, because he's been so against this charter agreement. So what is NASCAR at risk of here? Because him and his team did not sign the charter agreement. There was a deadline. If you're NASCAR, what are you doing? Right? You have all the leverage to go about life. And if 2311, it's up to 2311 to reach out to NASCAR and say, hey, we changed our mind and now we want to sign it.
Yep.
Or they, all of the other teams signed the agreement. So it's not like is 2311 pursuing like their own charter agreement? Is that even possible? Like, they probably, NASCAR, I don't think NASCAR that's on the table. So, or even possible given that they've already signed charter agreements or they have a charter agreement that, 30 other race teams signed or 28 other race teams signed. So what exactly happens next? Because NASCAR existed for 75 years before Michael Jordan came to a race. And I'm pretty sure it'll exist for 75 years after. So I don't think that NASCAR wants to lose Michael Jordan in 2311. They're extremely valuable team and organization, and they bring something to the table. Don't get me wrong. But the ball is completely in 2311's court now.
Mm-hmm.
Completely. Like, not just to the point that, like, oh, ping pong, the negotiation is back in your court. No, I think that if I'm NASCAR and I'm just looking through my interpretations of the art of a deal mixed with my own personal experience with how contract negotiations go, NASCAR could literally have no outbound communication to 2311 from here on out. Right?
Yeah.
There's none. There's no reason, other than anybody named Steve or anybody with the last name France at NASCAR should absolutely have a cordial relationship to Denny or MJ or Curtis Polk or Steve Valletta and be like, hey, dude, we want you here, right? We want you. Yep. We want you here. You bump into him in the motorhome lot. You take him out for drinks, whatever. We want you here, but like. The deal is the deal. The majority of these teams have proven that this is an acceptable offer, and now it is completely on 2311 to do whatever mental gymnastics Denny has to do in the public to say, okay, I don't agree with this charter agreement, but we're going to sign it. I suppose if the offer still stands, right? Because now I'm going back, and I know I'm ping-ponging around, but it's like, remember, there was a deadline. We don't really know what the or else was, Mm-hmm. Typically, when you have a deadline and an agreement like that, it's like, okay, here's the offer, deadline's at midnight, and anything after midnight, the offer is revoked. Yep. Right?
Yep.
Now, is the offer actually revoked? If Denny called right now and said, we'll sign it, you would think, common sense would tell you that NASCAR would be happy to sign with 2311. I don't think there's a better replacement for them.
Yep.
But like I said, NASCAR doesn't have to replace 2311. They don't have to have 36 charters. They can have as many as they want.
Yep.
Right? And there's not to be brash and repeat myself, but it's just like there was 70 Daytona 500s or however many Daytona 500s before Michael Jordan, and there'll be however many after him too. So I think if you're NASCAR, it's like, what do they do? I don't think there's anything to do. I think it's completely on those two organizations to have their counsel basically reach out to NASCAR and be like, hey, can we get that charter again? Is the offer still stand?
Well, and I think to your point, it's not like the deal is changing and it won't be from my interpretation of like, hey, this is the deal, take it or leave it. If it's still on offer, it's the same deal. It's not going to be a different one for them as opposed to other teams, right? The teams all signed it. And I thought some of these quotes in Jenna Fryer's Associated Press article were pretty interesting from Rick Hendrick. He said, I think we worked really hard for 2 years, and it got down to you're not going to make everybody happy, and I think it got down to I was just tired. He said, not everyone was happy, but in any negotiation, you're not going to get everything you want, and so I felt it was a fair deal, and we protected the charters, which was number one, and we got the revenue increase. I feel a lot of things we didn't like we got taken out, so I'm happy where we are.
And that's the truth. What he's saying is the absolute truth in a tough negotiation like that. Not everybody ends up happy. It is 100% true. And again, maybe I have my own confirmation bias in this all, but it's like he's also those quotes about being tired and sort of being worn down on it is a validation to me that it's like the leverage was in NASCAR's hands. These teams could never actually boycott the sport. It would have been foolish, and they would have blown up their organizations. They would have blown up their sponsorship agreements. They would have blown up their manufacturer relationships. And at the end of the day, the Daytona 500 would have fielded 40 cars in it with me and you driving for Billy Venturini and Joey Gase and Mike Harmon and
Big
Morgan
Racing,
Shepherd
baby.
and what? Yeah, I mean it's like anybody with a race car would have been made it on the entry list of the Daytona 500, and the show would have gone on, and I'll bet you 9 million people would have still watched.
Yep.
And so,
I
am just as interested though in like how 2311 and Front Row Motorsports, like how this story ends up playing out for them.
Well,
I think it'll be that dramatic. I'm kind of acting dramatic over it. I'm not letting you talk right now. But
okay, no, go ahead.
I
Nobody noticed.
very interested. I think, and anybody listening to this should just watch it close. Like, this is very interesting to me because the things that Denny Hamlin has stood on and is currently standing on, right, by not signing this agreement, are very real and valid concerns, wants and needs out of this agreement, their belief in the sport. Like, there's a lot of valid stuff. He makes great arguments. I don't know if I could, go head to head in a debate, topical with given last night's debate, presidential debate. I don't know if I could. I don't know how me and Denny Hamlin in a debate head to head would go, right? Like, I think that he's. I don't know if I disagree with a lot of the stuff all the time. It's, to me, I'm just more focused on the leverage point in this deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm very interested to see how this plays out because from a PR leverage perspective, they've like painted themselves in this corner, right? Where he's been such a loud voice against this charter agreement, and he's been such a loud voice against, what NASCAR was offering, in that it was like, not that they were working on it or close or anything. It was like unacceptable, right? And that it's not going to work. And, he's been pretty aggressive towards it and outspoken, which I appreciate because he's given us insight to this business that no other car owner has done for 50 years. But now what does he do, right? He can't get out of it. They've invested $70 million in these charters probably. And between the charters and the building and,
I was gonna say it's probably $100 million question.
Yeah, it's a $100 million question. Are they just going to quit? Like, I don't know.
I did see some commentary from Curtis Polk that said, potentially they would, and I think this is like a last resort race without a charter, that sort of thing. Like, they have the cars and the way to do it. I think that's extreme. I think this was
Would
an
that
interesting.
be cutting off your nose to spite your face?
I mean, without knowing the intricacies of their business, I do know that, this wasn't just money and it wasn't just permanent charters. There's other things, so many facets to this, right? As this sport evolves and starts to go through this in terms of IP, right? What rights do the teams hold of their brands and their drivers' rights, and, in terms of where their drivers are, what their drivers are allowed to do to promote the sport, but also working for them as their team and that sort of thing. And also, what them as teams hold as rights to utilize NASCAR's marks and utilize those. And so there's all that goes into this. And I think every single team had a lot of teams had different values placed on those things. Potentially, just let me put it out there, 2311 is Michael Jordan brand, a guy who has become a multi-billionaire from building a very powerful brand of which he owns the rights to. Yeah, it's his personal brand and that sort of thing. And they might be thinking bigger with 2311 than just a race team. It could become, a motorsports lifestyle brand for all I know. You know what I'm saying? So their interest, but I'm just going to put on the flip side, Team Penske or someone else might not value that sort of rights as much, right? So that has definitely been points of contention as to where these teams, even within themselves, have differing objectives and differing things that they value versus the other, if that makes sense.
So, and that is a very interesting point. And I hope that that's the case for Denny's sake, because I am a Denny fan. And I'm more of a Denny fan because of today's Denny than ever before, right? Because of his voice, because of his opinions, because of what side he stands on and how he's balancing it, what he's doing. And so I'm hoping for his sake that there is something bigger at play here, right? And that not signing the charter agreement and running an open car for the next 6 years is the obvious choice for him. I hope that's the case, because I think that would be interesting to see how it plays out. I think that it could potentially be big for the sport, big for him, big for MJ, like all of those things. But I just want to fixate on something really quick here, because we kind of, like, we can just shotgun, right? And we say all these things. It's like, oh, there's a bunch of the different scenarios. But let's just fixate on the one thing here that you said has been said, right? It's been thrown out there. It's a logical solution, or not solution, but it's a logical route for 2311 to go. But I want to fixate on it. So 2311 doesn't sign the charter agreement, and they choose to race as open cars. Okay? Let's just talk about that for a second.
Mhm.
They've bought 2, maybe 3 charters in the last however many years, couple years. They've spent how much money do you think on those charters? 40 million? Let's just say 40 million.
40 million.
Let's just say 40 million. So they spent 40 million on these charters. Now, I don't know, you're going to have to help me through this, but if they didn't sign this agreement, this charter agreement, are they potentially giving up their charters? Do they even have a chance to sell these charters that they own? Right? If they're not signing the new agreement? I don't know the answer to that. So there's a question there of like, are those $40 million they spent on those charters, are they worth zero right now? Is NASCAR just take them back? Or do they have a chance to sell them? Or are they required to? Obviously, like, they have to give them up one way or another because Daytona's right around the corner. So, like, can they sell them? Are they going to get them for? Is there a market for them? If they have the opportunity to sell them, or are they worth zero because NASCAR revokes them because they didn't sign the new agreement? I don't know, but that's a question, right? So there's like a $40 million potential swing, a $0 to $40 million swing there, right? Like, they either get them revoked for zero, or maybe they can sell them and recoup half of their investment or whatever, and then they become just an open team. Okay, so then now let's talk about them running as an open team. Well, the prize money to run as an open team, you're going to go from last place, you mentioned earlier, is $8.5 million to run last next year.
Potentially.
Last place as an open team is like $2 million, 1.9, I think, or whatever. $2 million, 2.5, whatever, something like that.
In the old deal, I mean, that was back in the old. I don't know.
In the old deal, right? I'm
We
just
don't know
basing
in the
that
new
off
one.
of old
Yeah.
numbers. I'm not.
Yep.
And by old, I'm talking a couple years old, right?
Mm-hmm.
Prize money goes up over time, so maybe it's $2.5 million to run last. Now, they're not going to run last, but they're also not running last with the charter agreement. They've got cars in the playoffs. They've got Bubba Wallace really close to the playoffs, previous playoffs contender. Those charters, would be making $10 million under the new charter agreement. And then as open cars, they would be making $3 or $4 million, right, given where they run. Okay, so they're giving up $12 million a year in prize money / their charter earnings. And then they would have to do that for how long? Right?
Yeah.
They either buy charters again, right? Spend that $40 million again, $50 million. If everything that everybody wants to happen with the charter agreements and the number keeps going up on charters, that $40 million they spent for 2 or 3 charters could potentially be $80 million 3 or 4 years from now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to do that again if they decide to buy a charter, or do they have to wait? And by the way, if they do that within 2, 3, 4 years, they're buying the current charter agreement, which they just turned down. So that doesn't make any sense. So if they're running as an open car, they're committing to run as an open car for a minimum of, how long is this agreement? 6 years? 5 years?
7 years. 7.
7. So they're committing to, let's assume that they would commit to running as an open car for 7 years, unless they change their mind and decide to buy a charter, buy themselves back in. It's hard for me. Maybe I'm going way too far ahead, but it's just like I'm trying to make sense of this, and I can't make sense of it because it's like the reason you would run as an open car is you go, okay, makes more sense for us to commit as an open team for the next 7 years until the next charter negotiation comes around, and then we're gonna. Well, then you're not even involved in the negotiation, right? Because you don't have a charter. You mean nothing to NASCAR at that point. You can't race your way into getting a charter. You got to buy one.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't. I don't know what they're doing. It doesn't make sense to me.
It's a fun thought exercise, and it doesn't wholly make a ton of sense in that sense, because the other side to this, as I gathered through bits and pieces over the last few months and actually year, part of this, what NASCAR is working towards with the teams, that sort of thing, is that in this next era, there's a collective group working closer together to promote the sport, right? Promote each other, promote the drivers to take the sport to the next level. If you go back 10 years ago, 15 years ago, one of the biggest problems within the sport was that you had all three entities that were vastly separated, although all working in the same industry, and that was tracks, teams, NASCAR, right? And they were fighting for the same sponsors, and they were, basically, out negotiating each other and all that sort of thing. And that still happens a little bit. But I think over the last decade, one of the things that has really been a trend is trying to come together as a whole and sort of push the same rock up the hill. And so if you're not in that, to your point, just putting this sort of put the financial side to the side, this just from a sort of being involved and having a seat at the table and that sort of thing, I think is another ramification to this that most people probably haven't even thought of. So it's more than just starting. It's more than just being locked into Daytona 500 and starting every race. I think it runs deeper, and it's only in this newest agreement. It only runs deeper, the connection between the teams and NASCAR and everyone working, sort of as one whole, as opposed to multiple entities against each other.
It's very interesting. I'm very curious how this plays out. I don't understand. I don't want to say I don't understand. I think I understand. I have my own perception of my understanding. I have my own understanding of it based on what I know. But here's what I will admit, because I know, Denny, you listen to the show. I know Steve Valletta listens to the show. I know Michael Jordan's listening to the show right now, and Curtis Polk. I know they're all listening to the show, and they're thinking, Landon, you fool. I will humbly admit that I don't know what I don't know, right? Like, I don't know what their big plan is. I don't know, what bigger vision they have for themselves, right? Beyond the sport of NASCAR. And that maybe just owning a charter in NASCAR is just a drop in the bucket to them, and that the only reason to really commit to this charter agreement was if they were going to get the commitments they wanted from NASCAR, right?
Yep.
But I still, given the level of knowledge that I have on it, they are fully in a checkmate scenario. It's like when you play chess and you only have a couple pieces left, and instead of withdrawing your king, you just run around the table,
fight to the death,
and fight to the death.
Do you ever see Monty Python?
Not really.
No. Oh, there's this scene where this knight is guarding a bridge, and they keep fighting him, and he loses like an arm, then the next arm, then his legs, and eventually he's like, well, I'll still fight. And the guy's like, you have no legs or arms. How are you gonna fight me? It's I wish you'd seen it. I'll have to send it to you. Just one more quote I want to put in here from Jenna Fryer's article that I thought was interesting from Rick Hendrick, considering he's not someone that we get to hear from often on these sorts of things. He basically alludes to the fact that he isn't sure what 2311 and Front Row are hoping to gain by holding out, that the charters they hold will theoretically expire and be revoked in December without an agreement in NASCAR. Hendrick said, I don't have a dog in that. I mean, it's like we've had so many meetings about this thing. I feel like the majority of teams felt like we got as much as we could, and it was time to move on. Justin Marks basically echoes a lot of the same sentiments in an article with Sportsnaut, essentially saying that he felt like it had checked the boxes for him in enough places that he could focus on building the race team and the brand he wants to build, and that that he's committed to NASCAR for a long period of time. So we'll see. I have one more question. What happens to the RTA? Is it still a thing?
I think so. I think the RTA has been effective.
Okay.
I think that NASCAR sort of did this little divide and conquer, potentially, to get the charter agreement signed. I think that isn't a. I'm not going to say that is a failure of the RTA. I think that to truly unify these teams, an association is not it, right? They still have unique business models. They're still funded in unique ways, in independent ways. I don't think that this is a failure on the RTA, that they didn't get everything they wanted. This is a complex negotiation, and I think the RTA has been effective, and I think that it's they've accomplished a lot, and I don't see why this would just dissolve the RTA.
Got it. Kyle Larson was announced that he's going to go back to the Indy 500, but this time NASCAR will be the priority. They have Tony Kanaan as a backup, and he will be ready to take over. Although if he starts the race, I believe Tony Kanaan cannot take over. So We'll see what happens there. Also, these rumors that were going all over the place the last 2 weeks about Alex, they were going on for like months. But Alex Bowman being removed from the 48 car at the end of the season are not true. He will unequivocally be in the number 48 next year. So thought that was interesting. Just want to talk quickly about Watkins Glen before we'll finish on some F1 stuff. There's the new curbing in the bus stop. Basically, they removed that curbing in the sim. It makes it very fast, but they've even added some little other bits right next to the wall, so we'll see how that affects things. They've also added these grooves in the track in the runoffs of Turn 1 and the carousel to stop us from going so far out. In the sim, you kind of don't want to touch it, but they're kind of like the grooves you have if you run off on a highway to the median and you get that loud noise. It's the same sort of grooving. So we'll see how that affects the cars. I could see the Xfinity cars being less affected by that, maybe potentially than the Cup car, but I don't know. We'll find out. So that'll be exploratory. Also, just thinking about the Xfinity Series at Watkins Glen, stacked field. It's the last race that Cup drivers can race in before we get to the final regular season cutoff and head into the playoffs. So we got an absolutely stacked field. Hopefully, I find a way to beat them all. One thing I didn't say is we have a new paint scheme this weekend on the number 48 with the Borchetta Bourbon car. That's the AJ Foyt edition Borchetta Bourbon, which is pretty cool.
I'm looking forward to seeing that. I haven't seen it yet.
Dude,
is it on social
it's
media?
online. Yeah.
Okay,
I've got.
Guess
Guess what? I'm racing a car with AJ Foyt's name on it. I gotta rise up. I mentioned we want to finish one last thing in F1. Aston Martin, what would we call this actually? Where all these teams were vying for this one-man services. None other than the greatest F1 designer of all time, Adrian Newey. Aston Martin won it. He will be going to Aston Martin to build them a car that Fernando Alonso hopefully can take to it. Would it be amazing to see Fernando Alonso at this stage of his career, early 40s to mid 40s, going for a championship?
Is this your Ray Evernham moment?
Where you like when Ray Evernham got the Dodge team, basically. Yeah. Oh, I think this has to be. Yeah. This is never. This is? I don't think there's ever been a acquisition of this level on the technical side, other than Lawrence Stroll doing this for Adrian Newey. This was ginormous. What was it? $20 million a year plus an equity stake, essentially.
That's what they're paying him.
Yeah. Ginormous.
Oh God.
And an equity stake.
That's amazing.
Just huge. I think it's gonna be big. I mean, he is proven time and time again, from McLaren to Red Bull, that give him the chance and he will build you a winning car. And funny enough, his book, How to Build a Car, is pretty incredible because the guy is just so smart. Also kind of a badass. He raced vintage cars like GT40s and everything still. Mm-hmm. So it's just a cool dude. But that's pretty
so
huge.
Cool. Will Stroll give him what it takes to win?
Oh yeah, I think that is without a doubt. The resources that place has been putting in are massive, and I think Stroll. You don't need to know much about him other than just seeing his comments and the way he acts to know that ego is a big part of his life, and that he wants to make a winning F1 team desperately, and he's willing to spend what it takes and put the resources behind it to do that.
That's cool.
So I think this was a big move. Ferrari was very rumored. That's why we assumed Lewis Hamilton maybe knew that he was going there, and that's what you go to Ferrari for. But no, Aston Martin got it, so it's pretty big. That's everything we had, man.
Well, before I know, so we got Kyle in the waiting room. I told him while you were going on that, I told him it's not today. Because I know that he wanted to kind of jump in with and have his comments. But so sorry, Kyle, we don't have time for you. Parker, I just wanted to kind of say how proud of you I am.
Thanks, buddy.
And you've been an amazing friend to me. We've talked at length about racing and careers and just this life, and you've committed to it to be the best driver you can be, and I think that you're a better driver than this sport even knows.
Appreciate it.
And so what you bring to the sport is amazing, and it's been special to me. It's elevated me as a person and as a driver in my life. And I know you've done that for a lot of other people too. So It's pretty. You've done a great job, and you're going to continue contributing to the sport because we love race cars, man. we
do.
always have.
Appreciate
you know,
it,
I appreciate what you've done, what you come out and say. You know, it's as you and I know, like we talk about racing all the time. These are like reflections and decisions that even I struggle with. Right?
Yeah.
It's like, where am I in my career? And I love where your head is at and what you're doing and your commitment level. So it's gonna be tough to transition into this mindset that is like, I still want to race, but I know that I'm not doing everything that it takes to be the best.
Yeah.
I struggle with that sometimes because it's like, yeah, I want to race, but I got a lot of other stuff going on, and I'm not, what it takes to be that full time, that cup level. It's another level of commitment. So,
100%.
but yeah, here's to the next chapter.
Thank you, buddy. Well said. I like to say that's an 8.5-day week job, and to your point, it's tough to be one toe in, one toe out, right? And thank you so much. You're a great friend, one of my best friends in the whole world, and I love that we do this podcast. And as I said before, we intend to do this, continue to do this, and
even if nobody's listening,
I think it'll be bigger and better than ever. But thank you, buddy. I appreciate it, and thanks for letting me take the time to put that out there. And I love you, and I know we're gonna do some fun stuff in this sport in terms of driving one of these days, but. And I look forward to what you do next driving, but it's definitely gonna be a transition. But for right now, I know I got to keep the head down and fully focused, and we'll figure all that out on the other side.
Awesome.
Peace, buddy.
See you next week.
See ya.